Right, do you want to have your conversation? Yeah. So firstly, I've got to start with an apology. The book that I read from last week, I forgot to bring it this week. However, we've got the recording from last week that we can use to frame this conversation in an edit. They can put last week's conversation, insert it so that I reread the same statement. But you know what it said, I know what it said, you were there, I were there, so now we can just talk about it. And this violent jihad, ladies and gentlemen, is justified in Islamic fiqh. So let me just read to you the relevant passage. Liberal fools in government do not understand. This is called the Book of the Reliance of the Traveller. It is a book of Islamic fiqh of the school of Shafi, which is one of the 4 classical books of Islamic fiqh. It is a madhab. Let me just read the relevant section on jihad. And I want all of you liberal politicians and all of you progressive bourgeoisie who don't know a damn about what you are talking about to listen carefully. There you go. That's what I'm reading. That's what I'm reading. And if any Muslim wants to stand next to me to make sure that I'm reading exactly what the text says, they can do so. In section 09, and all I'm going to ask you is, am I reading what it says? Jihad means to war against non-Muslims and is etymologically derived from the word mujahada, signifying warfare to establish the religion. And it is the lesser jihad. As for the greater jihad, it is a spiritual warfare against the lower self, NAFS, which is why the Prophet, Allah bless him and give him peace, said, as he was returning from jihad, we have returned from the lesser jihad to the greater jihad. The scriptural basis for jihad, prior to scholarly consensus, is such Quranic verses as, fighting is prescribed for you, Quran 2:16, slay them wherever you find them, Quran 4:8-9, fight the idolaters utterly, Quran 9:36, and such hadiths as one related to Bukhari and Muslim that the Prophet of Allah, bless and give him peace, said, I have been commanded to fight the people until they testify that there is no God but Allah, that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and perform the prayer, pay the zakat. If they say it, they have saved their blood and possessions from me, except for the rights of Islam over them, and their final reckoning is with Allah. And the hadith reported by Muslim, to go forth in the morning or evening to fight in the path of Allah is better than the whole world and everything in it. Details concerning jihad are found in the accounts of the military expeditions of the Prophet, Allah bless him and give him peace, including his own martial forays and those on which he dispatched others. The former consist of the ones he personally attended, some 27 others, say 29 of them, he fought in 8 of them and killed only 1 person with his noble hand, Ubay ibn Khalaf, at the Battle of Uhud. On the latter expedition, he sent others to fight himself, remaining at Medina, and these were 47 in number. What do you want to say?
Well, okay, so it will be added to the in later, so shall I summarise it as well? Or?
As you wish.
So,
you enjoy that one.
obviously you spoke about how you cannot take radicalisation out of Islam.
Yeah.
You quoted from the book that was
A book, The Reliance of the Traveller.
Reliance of the Traveller, and the Shafi'i
Section on the section on jihad.
Yeah, so the Shafi'i madhab stated that there's a lesser jihad and a greater jihad.
Correct.
And the lesser jihad was for you to fight non-Muslims.
Correct.
And the greater jihad was to do with fighting yourself.
Yes, your NAFS.
Okay. And then it went on to quote like ayat from the Quran where it says like فَضْرِبُوهُمْ or whatever, like
Yeah, fight the unbeliever.
yeah, and
Slay them wherever you find them.
Yeah, so it had all these
Strike at their necks. Cast terror into the heart of the unbeliever.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I don't deny any of these things. I just need to explain to you that the understanding. Okay, first of all, Islam originally was a territory as well. Like the people, they took over a territory, so they were a state.
Thank you. They took over a territory.
So
key point.
You know, if you're in a state, like even in the UK,
Yeah.
you could be forced into military, but by their doctrine, you're forced into military because you have to fight. But the fight that was considered the lesser, like I said, the lesser jihad. In fact, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said it's the easy war. It's not the difficult war.
Yep.
Right. It's very easy to instead of like having a discussion with your enemy, to just eliminate them with a dirty tactic or a night raid or whatever. You know, and just it's the simplest method is violence. You know, so obviously they were a state, so that's the lesser jihad. However, like the jihad that's being referred to, the lesser jihad, this is like also it's talking about violence, right? It can be violent. However, the greater jihad is not a violent one. Would you say? Is that violent?
No, I never said that.
So the word fight, you know, when it says for us to fight the non-Muslims, it doesn't have to be necessarily violent. I don't believe it has to be. I'm not watering it down. I feel like, you know, the fight now is with words because it's the harder one, it's the challenging one, it's the intellectual one, right? It's not simple. We have to, like, you know, you always say, oh, Islam is too early for criticism, people getting upset and emotional about all the criticism. You're right. It's more difficult to actually, you know, address all the criticisms. So I would just like to say, obviously, anyone who gets radicalized.
Sun cream.
Anyone who gets radicalized is a simpleton because as society gets more and more complex and diverse, there is not going to be anything as simple. I don't think war will be possible eventually. I mean, once we like all truly like become more complicated and mixed together,
Yeah.
eventually everything will be blurred. It will be very difficult to fight each other. It would be too difficult to have wars. So you know that was for a simple time. I would say, you know, I've said this before. Like all religion is very old. Like we live in the 2000 century, right? Millennium or whatever.
Yeah.
So these religions that we all discuss, we never was there. We don't know about the times. Like it's much simpler times. Much simpler.
Can I reply?
Yeah.
Right. So, firstly, I never said that the greater jihad was the violent one.
Yeah.
Right? Because I know what Islam teaches. I know what Islam teaches about jihad. The point that I was making was that jihad is intrinsic to Islam, and that liberal idiots who think that they can de-radicalize that are foolish to think that somehow they're going to convince Muslims to give up the lesser jihad. That somehow that lesser jihad won't always be a duty in the religion of Islam, because it will. I also want to point out, you mentioned that Islam at the beginning took a territory, and it's the word took there that's really important, because Islam took territory that wasn't its own. Medina was a Jewish town, Mecca was a pagan town, and the Muslims stole both. And then they drove out the Jews of the Khyber region and forced them out, right? Having oppressed them with a 50% jizya tax. Now, this is the example that is found in the hadiths, which means Muslims can't let it go, right? And I was pointing out to lots of the liberal fools who watch this, who would turn around and go, well, you know, when a Muslim does violent jihad, they're just really misunderstanding their own religion. The guy that I was talking to previously, before me and you start speaking, he's probably that kind of person. He probably thinks Muslims who do the lesser jihad are just Muslims that have misunderstood their own religion. Right. But the point is, I think that it's incumbent upon us to be wise about what Islam teaches. Yes, it's got a concept of greater jihad. Not that Sharia law does a great job of fighting the greater jihad, and if we want, we can talk about that more. Because I think Islam does a terrible job at fighting the NAFS. Islamic spirituality is rubbish. It surrenders to the passions all the time. And it surrenders within Sharia law. But the lesser jihad is always there in Islamic teaching, and we have to deal with Islam in that reality rather than pretending that it's not true. And if we accept it, we would be much harder, much harsher, much more vigilant, much more aggressive in dealing with anyone who leans towards that lesser jihad. And that's the kind of society that I'm arguing for. Not the one that fantasizes, fictionalizes, or romanticizes Islam, but takes Islam for what it is and then develops policies accordingly. And that means we can't ignore lesser jihad. We have to deal with lesser jihad for what it is. And deal with Muslims who acclaim it, proclaim it, practice it, support it, encourage it, fund it, do it. And we need to deal with the Islamic community in the knowledge that any Muslim at any time could decide, oh, I'm going to do the lesser jihad, right? But since you seem to be eschewing the lesser jihad and arguing that at some point in the future it might become redundant and it all becomes about the greater jihad, then let's talk about that. Because I put it to you that when you look at Sharia law, it's anything but fighting the NAFS. The greater jihad is just wordplay. That the reality is that in Sharia law, it's all about what men want, what Muslim men want, Muslim men get. And I give you the example of MISYAAR marriage. Do you know what MISYAAR marriage is? Right? MISYAAR marriage, as you know, is when a bride accepts lesser rights than she's actually entitled to, and can even enter into a secret marriage where maybe they meet in hotels, right? And the first wife isn't told about it. Now, that is one of the reasons for MISYAAR marriage, when you look at the fiqh around MISYAAR marriage. You've got that as well, but one of the reasons is that if a man can't control himself when he's far away for an extended period of time from his wife, he can have a MISYAAR marriage, right? But the woman doesn't get to have that.
Can I just correct you that the MISYAAR marriage is banned? It's only for like a certain amount of time.
You do know that there are. You do know that. You do know that there are. That there's. If you go to Islam QA, MISYAAR marriage is talked about as being legal, and that one of your most famous da'i is being accused of having a MISYAAR marriage. That's the accusation. The fact that you knew his name means you know about the accusation. I don't know if it's true. He's never come here to defend it. He's not released any public statement defending himself. Other people are doing it for him. Okay. But the reality is,
validity to the MISYAAR.
I'm saying that the MISYAAR marriage is something that Muslims are practicing, and that is not but that is surrendering. That is surrendering to your passions. Think about the reason for MISYAAR marriage. If you are far away from your wife for a long period of time, you can't keep it in your pants, you have a MISYAAR marriage, right? That is surrendering to your passions. That's not fighting the NAFS. There's no greater jihad there, right? Now, we Christians, we do fight the greater jihad, right? We obviously don't call it that, but we do fight it. It's intrinsic to Christian spirituality that you conquer your passions, that you conquer yourself, that you put off the old self and put on the Christ.
Put to death
the
flesh.
Yeah, you put the flesh to death, is the way that we describe it. Yeah, we don't sow into the things of the flesh, we sow into the things of the spirit. Yeah, in our ethical system, talking about the cardinal vices is an example of how we fight the NAFS. We fight against pride, we fight against gluttony, we fight against sloth, We fight against wrath. We fight against envy. We fight against, what are the other two? There's two more, I can't remember them, but you get the point, right? So we're busy fighting the NAFS. You Muslims talk about fighting the NAFS, but then your Sharia law surrenders to the NAFS all the time. That's fine. But let's come back to the point, because I'll give you another example of where Muslims surrender to the NAFS, right? And that is on the practice of divorce, right? When you get married, right, you're making a commitment in which you intend to raise children in this world. Agreed? Right, the point of marriage is to raise children, because neither of our religions agree with having children outside of marriage. So we're literally saying marriage and childbirth are connected. But in Christianity, because of the importance of the family and the importance of children, we are incredibly strict on divorce. Right? But a Muslim man can divorce a Muslim woman for virtually any reason. He just can go, is it takla? Is that the word? Takla, or Tarique. It just goes Tarique. Right? And yeah, there's disputes about how much time you must wait between each pronunciation of the Tarique. Right? But the point is, the fact that a man can divorce a woman for nearly any reason at all means that once again, Islam is surrendering to the NAFS. There's no greater jihad in Islam. Yeah, you talk about the greater jihad, but the reality is you just do whatever you want according to Sharia law, and there's some jurist, some scholar who'll just make up anything for you to do what you want.
Well, the Quran says, like, so you still have to give, there's the dowry, and then there's the payment for if they divorce. So there's a lot of things that prevent a Muslim man. Also, if he has children, because are you saying that he can take the children?
Well, most Muslim men do take the children, unless they choose not to. The reality is they do take the children, but the point is, a Muslim man can divorce a Muslim woman for nearly any reason, right? It's a free-for-all.
If he has the money to pay her.
So long as he can pay the dowry, right? But he can do whatever he wants. Now that is not surrendering to the NAFS, because if you decide, well, I want to divorce you because actually you're not pretty to me anymore, or I want to divorce you because you're ill and I don't want to look after you, or you're disabled and you can't look after me. That's just surrendering to the NAFS.
But the hadith says that God hates the thing that's most hated to Allah is divorce. So
and yet your scholars my point is, right?
So they're not.
What are the reasons that stop a Muslim man? Google it. What are the reasons that stop a Muslim man from divorcing his wife?
I mean, just for the sake of Allah, he will not divorce her. So,
right. What are the grounds by which he can divorce her?
So
you can Google it.
So you're saying it's perfectly valid for him to divorce her if he wishes?
A man in Islam,
he has
for nearly any reason, I'm not saying for any reason, but for nearly any reason, can just divorce a woman.
But it says in the Quran that God hates it. So,
but Muslims still do it. But Sharia law still lets it happen.
I know, but then that's his sin.
Yeah, but the Sharia law still lets it happen. So where's the greater jihad? Where's the jihad?
If he wants to divorce her, it's better than...
what, slapping her?
No, I'm just saying...
Because your Quran...
It's better than...
Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example of not fighting the NAFS. Another example. Let me give you another example of not fighting the NAFS, right? Okay. Would you agree with me that jealousy and conspiracy and a lack of trust are all fruits of the NAFS?
Yeah, but...
right. If you agree that these are all fruits of the NAFS, he says in the Quran that if you suspect your woman of disobedience, first you admonish them, second you banish them from the bed, and third you strike them. Right? That's not surrender, that's not fighting the NAFS. Because your suspicion might be rooted in jealousy, your suspicion might be rooted in mistrust, your suspicion might be rooted in your childhood trauma. That doesn't mean that you can form trusting relationships.
But there's a hadith about that jealousy. There's a hadith about jealousy that says Allah loves jealousy with probable cause where he does not love that which is like baseless. So baseless jealousy is condemned in Islam. It's called ithm.
Yeah.
False assumption.
Yeah.
It has to be like he has to have some evidence. And also there's witnesses.
But a man is permitted to punish his woman based on his feelings.
I mean, evidence though.
No, it doesn't say that in the Quran.
The hadith says evidence.
It doesn't say it in the Quran.
No, it doesn't say anything.
Well, right.
You're trying to like schism the Quran away from hadith.
Well, there's huge problems with hadiths and
I know,
Quran.
bro, like you're trying to turn people to Quranists then.
Yeah, but I mean, they would do better if they were Quranists, because at least the Quran is rooted in the 7th century. Whereas the hadiths, and trust me, that'll get me in trouble with some people, but the hadiths come 200 years later, right? They can't be trusted, right? There's problems in the isnad chains. Let me give you an example, and you can check this for yourself. I'm not lying to you, right? Do you know who Ikramah is? Ikramah. Right? He's one of the guys that appears in the isnad chains for many hadiths in Sahih al-Bukhari, right? Imam Malik didn't trust Ikramah for his hadiths. In Imam Malik's collection of trusted hadiths, right? Imam Malik only takes one hadith from Ikramah, and he only does it because he finds another isnad chain that says the same thing. But Sahih al-Bukhari, he takes loads of hadiths from Ikramah. Now you've got two of your big scholars disagreeing about whether you can trust Ikramah in the isnad. So who do you believe? Imam Bukhari or Imam Malik? Which one's right?
Some of them are more careful than others.
Yeah, but who's right between Imam Malik and Imam Bukhari?
Whoever has the less hadiths.
Whoever has the fewer number.
Because I feel like
in the fewer number.
Those more, they validated those more, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Because they're both scholars. So
I don't know. I'll be honest. For this conversation and for the purposes of this conversation, I don't know how many hadiths Imam Malik looked at. So it could be, but I understand your principle.
Yeah.
And actually, I think it's probably a sound principle in terms. It's probably an improvement on isnad science. But isnad science actually praise people for studying the isnad. It's all about the isnad in hadith science, right? It's not about who studied more or less, okay? But my point that I'm getting at is that in Islam, right, there's no, you talk about the greater jihad, but the reality is your Sharia does not make you fight the NAFS. Your Sharia goes along with the NAFS. If you want a religion that fights against the NAFS, become a Christian, right? We are not allowed to have secret marriages. We're not allowed to have more than one wife. We're not allowed to abort our children just because they're inconvenient, because they're ill. But in Islam you can, right? We can't divorce our wives just because we feel like it, because they no longer please us. We can't beat our wives just on a suspicion, right? We have to control our own passions, our lusts, our anger, our envy, our greed, our gluttony, our sloth, right? We have to battle our passions, right? And if you compare the battle of passions within Christianity to the battle of passions within Islam, you'll see another thing. You'll see that Christianity is a true religion of the greater jihad, whereas Islam talks about the greater jihad but never does it.